like to welcome Scott.
Yeah.
And you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, thanks. Before I start, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. Yeah, so then I don't need to use the microphone. My name is Scott Dille, and I work for Novo Nordisk. And I was really happy and thank you for inviting me here today, so I can tell you a little bit about my career path and also about Novo Nordisk a little bit, and also hopefully have some time to answer your questions. What's really interesting when I first came in here is looking at the male to female ratio in this room right now. And I work as a global communication project lead in corporate sustainability and across a wider department. But there are 3 of us out of 26 in the sustainability team who are males in Novo Nordisk. So there's some sort of match here between it's a very female focused theme, sustainability. And before I go on, I just wanted to just point out this little graphic here, because it's very simple, and I'm sure you've seen something similar to it many times before. But as I go through my career path, I think it fits very well with finding something that I love to do and finding something I was good at, and then being able to find a way for people to pay me to do that. I'm originally from a small farm town just outside of Seattle, Washington, called Puyallup. We boast the 4th largest state fair in the United States. Lots of cows and cattle and chickens and so on. And when I was graduated from high school, I attended the University of Washington, where I got a degree in creative writing and economics. And at this time, I was just 21, 22 years old, and so I wasn't really good at much of anything because I hadn't really done anything. But I knew that I really loved writing, and I really loved telling stories, and along with that came a passion for education. So about 2 weeks after I graduated, I moved to South Korea, and I taught at the University of Busan in South Korea, where I was teaching English to university students during the day, and at night it was usually classes of businessmen. And there I really started to slowly reflect on the fact that I was pretty good at explaining things to people, and if any of you, now I think most of you, and myself included, have been in a second language setting here in Denmark. But if you've ever had a chance to teach a second language, it really is a great way to help to develop those skills in having to articulate something and be a bit pedagogical. And so I started to catch on that I was okay and getting better at teaching or explaining things to people. And then I decided that I wasn't ready to go home yet, and so I moved to Taiwan, where I spent a year studying Mandarin. And after a while, I realized that I needed to get a job. So I started to look around and try to combine my knowledge of Chinese together with my teaching. And I got a position as a foreign manager for a chain of private English schools. The staff was all foreign-speaking, English-speaking from Canada, the UK, Australia, the US. And they had a Chinese management, and they needed somebody to sort of liaise, be the middle person between these 2 groups of people, and I fit right in and spent the next 7 years working across Taiwan, and also there was some of the chains were in mainland China as well, so I was back and forth between those 2. And I really was starting to get the hang of something I was good at and something I really loved to do, when suddenly a good friend of mine in Taiwan came with a proposal to buy a bar in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean. And though I knew I wasn't good at running anything, I was very good at visiting bars, but I wasn't so good at running them, I knew that I really loved not only just the being with people and educating people, but I just really loved being with people, and entertaining people kind of started to fit in there too. So I left and bought a bar right on the beach in the Dominican. This is not a picture from the bar, but it was very similar to this kind of setting. And I really realized that this was a great thing to be. I mean, the influence you could have over people's moods and people's feelings was quite a powerful feeling. Very different than teaching, but just as rewarding. And I really thought, okay, now I finally found something I was going to do. I mean, I did have visions like Tom Cruise and Cocktail that I was going to live out my days here in this beach setting and wear a Hawaiian shirt and grow my hair long. When I met a Danish woman, and she was traveling, she was 3-4 years out of gymnasium and thinking about going back to university. And so she wanted to do one last big travel before she started her career path. And she was supposed to just have a short stop in the Dominican on her way to Costa Rica. One thing led to another, and she got a job at the Italian restaurant next door, and we met and started to hang out. And then she got a job actually in the bar, and soon it became more of a boss-employee relationship, and we fell in love and thought, okay, now we're going to live out this dream together here in the bar. But after some months of going to bed at 2-3 in the morning and waking up around noon and having to do all these practical things, it's not Tom Cruise Cocktail at all. Then we decided, okay, maybe this isn't the path we want to go on. And she said, well, I'll go back to university in Denmark. You can come. It'll only take 2-3 years and I'll be done, and then we can go off and travel the world again. But that didn't happen right away, so I knew I had to get a job. And so I think maybe at this point I was in the position that maybe many of you are in. I didn't know the language very well. I was attending language school in Novo, but mainly just walking around the city and fantasizing about the beach. And then I started to think, okay, well, I'm pretty good at teaching, and I have now some good experience in a management, especially in a school setting. So I started to look around at the international school scene here in Denmark. And it just so happens that a international school up in Copenhagen was hiring a teacher. They needed a part-time teacher. So I went up there and applied for the job and had some interviews, and I got the job, and so I was just happy to have some kind of income. But within 2 months, the head teacher of the middle school left, and I was the only one, so this isn't necessarily a reflection on my skills, but I was the only one who could actually come up and take that position. And then 2 months later, the headmaster of the school, we don't know exactly what happened, but she kind of disappeared, and the overall principal of the school just, saw one guy that looked, pretty respectable and spoke English well enough. So I got the job there, and so soon I was the middle school principal at Husum International School. And I spent 3 years there. Not only was it a great way to keep building my skills, especially the diplomacy skills it takes when you're trying to manage relationships with teachers, with students, and with parents. I tell you, if any of you have ever worked in a school setting, it's got to be the most challenging profession that there is, trying to balance these various interests. But it also is a great opportunity to learn how to communicate to people, to be diplomatic to people, to be empathetic with people. And I gained that over the 3.5 years at Husum International School, but I really didn't feel that I was loving to do what I wanted to do, which was getting back to being a little more creative, being able to write. And so I decided, if I'm going to take a career shift, I take the traditional route and go back to education. So I applied at Copenhagen Business School in the full-time MBA program, and it was a 1-year full-time MBA, so it was around 60 to 65 hours a week, continuously for a year. So you got to chop a year off a traditional master's degree, but you had to then be willing to give your time and full attention for 1 year, and I thought it was worth it, and my family thought it was worth it, so that's what I did. And right out of my MBA program, I, once again, was in a position having to figure out what I was going to do next, and I came across, through an international network here in Denmark, a job at the American Chamber of Commerce. They needed somebody who could come in and help to advise on policy positions and write policy positions and write argumentation briefs that then we would take to the Danish Parliament on behalf of American and foreign companies invested in Denmark. And I think it matched some of the skills that I'd been working on, and I also got to go back to writing, and though it's not creative like writing a novel, it's very creative in finding ways to present argumentation and to find ways to convince people of a certain perspective or a certain point of view. And I really liked it for a short time, and then after a while you realize that you are a lobbyist, and it's a certain feeling going home at night that isn't as nice as it was teaching children. So I once again began to kind of open up my lens a little bit and see what was out there, and I saw a job for a position working in Novo Nordisk on their annual report. They needed somebody to help to do the writing on the annual report and to do some of the editing and proofreading on the annual report. And I thought, wow, this is now really perfect. And also when I was in my MBA studies, there was a case on Novo Nordisk and Novo Nordisk's corporate sustainability and triple bottom line. I thought, wow, this is a great company, a very un-American company. And so I applied and I got the job, and once I got in there, I started to look around and could see that the communications around Novo Nordisk sustainability wasn't being amplified enough. I don't think that it's a great surprise that most of the time Danish people can be a little bit humble and a little bit modest. And they were doing some really fantastic stuff, and people were just not talking about it. So I began to write press releases when we had little sustainability events, milestones, or achievements, and send those out on the press wires. And people thought that was really nice, so they actually created a position for doing this communications. And at the same time, I was also able to join as communication support for a diabetes prevention innovation project. And then in 2013, they expanded the team, and they made me a team leader of internal and external communications around corporate sustainability. And then last year, I took a new position as leading the same communications, but now beyond just corporate sustainability, but also some of the non-product brands of the company. And personally, this is my wife. She's the one who brought me here to Denmark. And it's been 16 years now that I've been here. And these are my two kids, Silas and Vega. They are 2 to 3 years older now. That's quite an old picture. But that is my story. And if you have any questions, if you can just hold them to the end, because I'll just go through a little introduction to Novo Nordisk and corporate sustainability, and then we should have plenty of time for questions after that. But if Novo Nordisk is a global healthcare company specializing in diabetes, but also has a strong position in other chronic diseases such as obesity, hemophilia, human growth deficiency, and human replacement. We are now 41,000 employees spread across 180 countries where our products are marketed. And supplying, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance, but if you do, Kalundborg is a very nice city, a very nice little port city, and just outside of Kalundborg is where all the insulin is produced, and it's actually responsible for producing half of the world's supply in insulin. It's the world's largest insulin producing factory. Based on the sales from last year, it's the 15th largest pharmaceutical company in the world, which is very impressive for a country the size of Denmark when you not just look at Novo Nordisk, but you look at Lego and you look at Maersk and you look at Carlsberg, some of these massive global companies all coming out of a country of 5 million. Oh. One of the I think the strongest foundations of Novo Nordisk as a recognized sustainable company is the company culture. There's a lot of effort and a lot of investment put into creating a strong company culture that is basically helping to guide people's behaviors in doing the right thing. This is the Novo Nordisk Way. It is the company culture book. It is made of 10 essentials that every employee should try to live by in their day-to-day work. And at the bottom of that is Novo Nordisk's triple bottom line, which is a commitment to be financially, socially, and environmentally responsible. And it is not something that we do because corporate sustainability is just the right thing to do, but also because it's a very good business decision to make. And as the CEO says, when you look at the financial bottom line, if you're not seeing the social opportunities or challenges, and you're not seeing the environmental opportunities or challenges, at some point, that's going to hit your financial bottom line as well. So that is sort of the CEO's position of why a triple bottom line is so important at Novo Nordisk. And this is where the annual report comes in, and why it's based in corporate sustainability is Novo Nordisk is one of the few companies in the world that actually audits and produces an annual report that is not just a financial performance report, but also looks at the social performance of the company and the environmental performance of the company. The reason being that no decisions or performance can really be adequately assessed unless you're looking at all three parameters. And one of the things, at least from a social responsibility perspective, is doing business with a respect for people. And this includes many things, but I think three of the things that I always like to highlight is diversity and inclusion. Novo Nordisk is a very diverse and a very open company, I think as most Denmark is. Health and safety, not only from a traditional safety, making sure there's no accidents, but also trying to make sure that people are motivated and have the opportunity to improve their health. This is around every 2 years, every employee has the opportunity to a health check. And so every 2 years you're assessed and you can actually see, has certain things, my cholesterol, my weight, anything gotten worse, and you then get support to help you to get on a healthier course. And then human rights. When you're working especially a lot in many global countries, there's always risks of not doing the right thing when it comes to human rights. And this can involve security guards outside of factories in some countries who maybe in their society it might be okay to be a little more physical than we would accept from a global international human rights perspective. Oh, forgot. And lastly, Lastly, I just wanted to highlight this because I think it's an interesting statistic, but also I think it's an interesting conversation to have of whether a company that is a sustainable company or has a sustainable focus has value when it comes to the people who work there. And in this study, they asked a group of university-age students, of all the things being equal, would you take a 15% pay cut if you were to work for a company committed to CSR? 35% said they would. 45% said that they would take that pay cut for a job that makes a social and environmental impact. And a whopping 58% said they would take that pay cut to work for an organization with values like your own. And when we've done these surveys and had these questions internally to especially new employees, but also employees who've been with the company for a while, it's amazing how many stay and are passionate about coming to work every day because of Novo Nordisk's triple bottom line. Now, the last thing I wanted to close off with is I'm not very good at giving job advice, and people also ask many people, especially in sustainability, how they can get a job at Novo Nordisk or how they can get a job in corporate sustainability. And as you can see from my journey, it was a little bit random. I don't think I really had anything really planned one step to the next step. But I did know that it was me and only me that could define this career path. And all the degrees and education, they can help, but it was up to me to find what I love to do and what I was good at doing. And the other thing too, I think has been to be curious and to always look for the opportunities that benefit other people, especially when working in a large organization. It can be very easy for people to really not be able to focus on their own job and doing their own things that they're being asked to do. But you should also be looking at, so how can I help that person over there? Or how can I help that person over there? And when you start doing that, it really helps to increase your visibility as someone to be valued. And finding out who your customers are and focus on their needs. And that goes for any organization. And especially the bigger organization, the further you are removed from that customer. And the challenge with that is suddenly people forget what you're actually doing as a whole, but only see their own little area and what it is that they do there. But it's always important, I think, to look to figure out who is that end customer or consumer that you're trying to serve. And lastly, I think it's very important to stay reflective on what you're good at and keep open to looking for ways that you can take that and apply it in a lot of different situations. And I think that is you know, it's not the career as the progression of doing the same thing, but I think your career path is maybe more personally valuable, at least it is for me, to be following what it is that I like to do and what it is that I'm good at. And whether that takes place in a company or in a school or in a bar or as a lobbyist, I think that is just the right way to go, at least it was for me. And that's all I have for myself and for Novo Nordisk, and I'm very open to your questions. Yeah?
At what stage did you have children?
I had children when I was 32 years old. So it was after I'd come to Denmark and after I'd been at it was during the period where I was at the international school. That's, yeah. And then the second child actually was 8 years after that. How old was I then? 38, 9, somewhere around there. So I was late. Yeah, and there's a question.
Yeah, I want to ask some question about communication. In general, it's like, how do you make people understand you? How do you express yourself with people that think the totally opposite way? And a concrete example could be, if you look at the triple bottom line, some people focus more on environmental, some people focus more on social, some people focus more on financial. So how, if we take extreme example like people are on the corner of this triangle, how do you make those extreme types communicate together and understand each other?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a couple of approaches when in these situations. I mean, I think not that I do them in any order, but I will definitely try to find that what's in it for me. Try to find what it is that could be in it for the other person to see this perspective or to change their perspective. So, for example, so we had marketing, and there was a lot of conversations and events that were geared towards communicating with healthcare professionals. You know, that is part of their job, is to educate or to explain new products to healthcare professionals. So they would be an example of seeing the financial and the social bottom line. You know, they would say we are helping doctors and educating doctors, and they would say that maybe they don't really see an environmental bottom line is so important. It doesn't do anything. And we're able to you know, you have an idea, we sit and have an idea. It's like, well, why not start to look at the environmental footprint of some of these big congresses and these big meetings that a lot of time and travel are involved with, and see what's the carbon footprint of this whole scenario here. But of course there would be no interest for them to do that. It's a lot of time and a lot of waste. So what would be in it for them would be for healthcare professionals to, one, also feel a passion about sustainability. So can we go out and try to do some research and say, what are the perceptions, what are the opinions of healthcare professionals? Are doctors more likely than average people to believe in the need to address climate change, for example? And secondly, we can also show that all other competitors are also pretty much doing the exact same thing. So what's the difference whether I go to company A, B, or C? I'm going to go there and they're going to tell me, oh, we got this great stuff and blah, blah, blah. So you would really stand out if you were the company that was saying, hey, by the way, when you come and talk to us in this booth, I just want you to know that we have that this is a CO2 neutral. This is a CO2 neutral conference booth right here. Suddenly, people's attention changes a little bit. It's like, well, that's kind of different. I've never seen that at a pharma medical conference before. So it's also a way of trying to find that what's in it for them, I think is number one. And number two is sort of same sort of process, but trying to understand, you know, if I say environmental responsibility is a really great thing and they don't think so, is trying to understand, well, why don't they think so? Because that's what I need to target with communications, is changing that aspect of their mental model that has led to a conclusion that environmental responsibility isn't important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. First of all, I think it was indeed true that you have good communication skills. And I have two questions. First, I understand that you approach fundamentally career choices, but like I want now is that you're very reflective about it. So do you approach it similarly now at this stage, or do you have other strategies?
Yeah, I do. I would say that as I get older, I get less risk-taking because I'm at a point where I'm starting to think about what do I want to do, what would I want to do next. And one of the things I know is I really would love to go back to Seattle. I mean, I've been away now for 25, 26 years, and it would be great to live there again. And so I've actually been starting to think about, okay, but what could I do there? But I think, and so the truth is, this has probably been like a 2-year dialogue in my head. And maybe when I was younger, I might have not let the dialogue go on that long. But you know, it's like, but what if nothing happened? Or what if I didn't get a job? Or what if I didn't find a job that I liked? Or what if the whole family moves over there and, you know, after 2 months have to turn around and go back home and try to find a new job here? So I think all those discussions, but I definitely still reflect on identifying what it is I'm good at and what it is I love to do, and trying to then, you know, take that filter out there and try to see where it could match. And I think all of us who are in a situation where, unlike most of our most of the people back at our respective homes who might live in the same area forever, or it's more easy to take that traditional career path. But all of us got shaken up. We got thrown somewhere where, boom, do something different, find something. And language is a barrier, culture is a barrier, many things are a barrier. And I think it's really important then for people like us to be able to just have our offering. This is what I'm good at, this is what I love to do, and go out there and try to find that match out there. And you just don't need to do that to the same degree if you grow up, get educated, live and work in your kind of same area all your life. First of all, you know everything around there. I mean, it's not new. Here, you have to have that filter in order to make sense of something new, like living and trying to find a job in a different country, or trying to change careers. Yeah.
When you're talking about environmental sustainability, what kind of jobs are you talking about, apart of measuring the CO2 emissions? And is there any project that Novo Nordisk invests on, like environmental projects?
There's environmental projects in partnerships like the city of Kalundborg, for example. Novo has partnered with the municipal government there to try to make Kalundborg a more sustainable from an environmental perspective, but healthier place to live as well. But outside of that, I mean, most projects are very much internal. And kind of, maybe I'll do a rough split. One is very technical engineer related, and that's more in the factories. And then one is much more measurement knowledge worker, and that's looking at the company as a whole. So I work with colleagues who are responsible, for example, of mapping. So let's say, insulin comes in either a traditional syringe or a pump, which is attached, not permanently, but attached to your body, and there is the needle that has been inserted and taped, and then you don't have to worry about injecting yourself multiple times. It's already in there, and you just, when you need to give yourself more insulin, you can adjust that on the pump. Or it comes in a disposable device. So it's a plastic, it's called a flex pen, many different versions of it, but they're meant to be very convenient and very easy to carry around without being burdensome, so you can give yourself an injection. In some people's job, it is to map the carbon footprint of one of these pens. So all the way back from the raw materials, all the way up to the end disposal. And there's many jobs, or colleagues I work with, this is their job, but in different, sometimes it's company cars. So how much around all the company cars around the global operations, what is the CO2 emissions from all of these cars? And how can we reduce that? Is it something we can reduce? Can we set a target on it? How can we, in business travel, all of these things? And then the third is more of that policy advocacy jobs, where it's being members of different working groups at the UN level, or at the WHO, but that's also around health, but there's starting to become a conversation about chronic disease, type 2 diabetes, and the link between lack of physical mobility and the use of motorized transportation. So, and also our food consumption. So, a lot of environmental impacts are caused by the same behaviors that also increase risk for a lot of chronic diseases. So if we're going to change behaviors, we should be looking at these two things in the same way, because we have this group over here who's all trying, they're thinking about health, and this group here is thinking about the planet and climate. And they're actually trying to achieve the same ends, a change in some of these behaviors. So there's a lot of work being done to try to bring these two groups together and try to figure out what could they do together? How would they be able to achieve a common goal? Yeah.
So if you reflect upon your career path, So for us, if we get a job, so would you recommend us to go deeper in one position or to try different things? Because I've got a couple of different advices about that.
Yeah.
One encouraging you to try, and one encouraging you to learn longer period. So what do you think is the best?
God, I think it can be so individual, because I know people who cannot do a job for more than 2 years before they have to thinking about what am I going to do next? Where am I going next? And I think the larger the organization you work in, the greater opportunities it is to do things like that. But I think maybe on the macro scale, I've done a lot of different things, but I think within those times where I'm actually in doing those things, I do the same thing a lot. So I'm kind of conservative, I think, when it comes to like within Novo Nordisk. I mean, I know it's been kind of different roles, but it's been very much communication focused is where that's where I've focused. And back to your question too, when I reflect on it, I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do anything besides communication. Therefore, I don't really know where I would move inside the organization, and that's why I can think maybe I need to go back outside of the organization. So I think it changes, but I think that if I look at some of the top, like if you had an ambition to go on some sort of management laddership kind of position, the one thing I can see is that all of the top management, one of the things they have in common is they've done a lot of different things. They were working in finance to working out in the sales in one of the markets, and then they've come back and worked in a marketing role. And so I think that in a big organization, there's a lot of value placed on people who know and understand and have a little bit under their skin how the whole organization works. Yeah?
Well,
No?
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking CSR is a new kind of thing for some companies, and maybe one question would be, is Novo Nordisk the only company in, you said that was a little special that Novo Nordisk had these CSR things going on. So how do you see this at a global comparison between maybe the Danish companies? Are they more CSR oriented than other companies in the world? And what's the future from there?
I think definitely Scandinavian companies, have a better reputation, and I think a better performance record when it comes to sustainability. And this is just my own personal. I mean, I've had 16 years here to build my own theories, and my theory on it is that there's something also in Scandinavian society, in Danish society, that already has a certain sustainability element to it. There is a very strong inclusion sort of way of thinking, where it is our job to make sure that even the person who has the hardest time in society is receiving some kind of help. And I'm willing to actually contribute to making that happen. And I think the fact that it's a very dialogue-based sort of consensus, process that Denmark has, and also a very critical way of thinking. I mean, that critical thought, I think, is something that's very important in Danish education. And I think that makes corporate sustainability already in a really good starting point. I can only speak from the US perspective, and there is a belief that everybody can make it to the top. I mean, that's the American dream. We all can make it to the top. But if someone's not making it to the top, that's sort of personal responsibility. I don't really need to contribute to some greater societal fund in order to help that person, because that wouldn't actually be helping them. Helping them would be, you know, giving them a pat on the back or a kick and saying, come on, you can do it. Everybody can. And so I think that this, at least in my mind, I've always looked at these two different ways of sort of thinking and sort of linking that back to why a lot of Danish and a lot of Scandinavian companies are seen as sustainability leaders and respected sustainability leaders. Yeah.
Well, I guess that was the time we had. And I would like to thank you very much for coming, Scott.
You're welcome.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
And
I hope you enjoyed it.
Scott a big hand. And as a little thank you, we have a bottle for you and a special gift, which is a poster. So this is the wine you can drink while watching the special poster with. It's one of our latest products. It's a poster with the word "no" in many different versions. Did some of you see the Facebook? Yeah. Some of you nodding. Yeah. It was hitting on Facebook. So we've turned a Facebook hit into a product. So it's a poster where it says "no" and all kinds of translation. It's very much about communication, actually. It's how can you use the word "no" and say thousands of things. Yeah. So, but thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks so much.